Kirill 9 was once a beacon of Terran diplomacy and interstellar colony world where humans and alien allies coexisted peacefully. Located on the fringes of known space, it had always been vulnerable but never isolated. The Terran Federation, vast and powerful, maintained order through a network of ships, stations, and trade alliances. And so, the people of Kirill 9 believed that no matter what happened, Earth would protect them. That illusion shattered the day the Threx Dominion descended. The Threx, a militant empire with a long history of subjugating weaker species, had avoided direct conflict with humanity for decades. But with Earth focused on inter-system reconstruction and with Kirill 9 lightly defended, the Dominion saw an opportunity. They struck swiftly, blockading orbit, deploying shock troops to key planetary nodes and jamming all long-range communications. The planetary governor issued a distress signal, confident it would be received. For days, citizens watched the skies, expecting the arrival of Terran warships. But nothing came. Days turned into weeks. The Dominion's troops began their purge. Human defenses crumbled. Alien allies tried to resist, but the Dominion crushed all opposition. Their commander, Admiral Voran, took a perverse pride in broadcasting his victories, mocking the silence of Earth. He made a show of capturing the capital, tearing down the banners of the Federation, and raising the blood-red sigil of the Threx. In its place, his message to the Terrans, if they were even listening, was clear: you are not feared anymore. Voran's arrogance was mirrored in the despair spreading across the colony. Civilians were herded into camps. Public executions became daily rituals. Broadcast towers looped the same message: Earth has abandoned you. And people began to believe it. This psychological warfare was almost as devastating as the physical one. The Federation had always been seen as uncheckable, if not omnipotent, then at least omnipresent. But now, as days passed and the stars remained quiet, that image fractured. From orbit to surface, silence reigned. The galaxy took note. On distant worlds, alien diplomats and military strategists whispered, "Has Earth grown weak?" Some called for caution. Others saw opportunity. If humanity no longer protected its frontier colonies, what did that mean for its central systems? Back on Kirill 9, resistance became desperation. Lieutenant Mira Han, a decorated ground officer, had once commanded a full regiment. Now she was down to a ragtag band of 12. They lived in hiding in the western mountain ranges, surviving on ration packs and stolen intel. They had no illusions of victory, only survival. Mira's nights were spent staring up at the stars, watching for a flash of hope, a signal, a contrail, anything. She remembered her training. If the Federation goes silent, it's because something bigger is coming. But even her faith wavered as time dragged on. She heard the screams echoing from the valleys. She saw the skies filled with enemy ships, untouched and unchallenged. Earth's silence began to feel more like absence. Her squad asked questions she couldn't answer. Why haven't they come? Did our message even get through? Are we just not worth saving? Mira told them to hold on. Earth never forgets its own, she said. But deep down, she feared it might be a lie. The psychological toll mounted. Some in her squad argued for surrender. Others wanted to make one final attack. Mira refused both options. She held the line not out of tactical brilliance, but raw defiance. Even if Earth had abandoned them, she would not. And yet, through all the ruin, a strange sort of quiet dignity remained. The kind only humans possess in the face of annihilation, not resignation, but patience sharpened into resolve. Then one night, something changed. A strange burst of static crackled across shortwave frequencies. A string of unmarked coordinates flickered onto Myra's datapad. No origin code, No explanation. Just numbers and silence. She stared at them, heart racing. It could be nothing. Another Dominion trick. A trap. But then came the tremors. Far above the mountains. Thunder without lightning echoed across the horizon. Mira stood, eyes locked on the stars. Something was coming. The sky remained silent. But not for long. 3 days had passed since the cryptic signal reached Kiral 9's surface coordinates without context, drifting across shortwave frequencies like ghost code. Lieutenant Mirahan and her resistance cell hadn't moved. Not yet. Not until they were sure. The Dominion, meanwhile, dismissed it entirely. Admiral Varan considered it a technical hiccup, an aftershock of damaged Terran satellites. After all, Earth had remained silent for weeks. What could one mysterious coordinate mean? Nothing had changed in orbit. No new contacts. No movement. The Dominion still controlled the skies. Then came the tremors, not seismic ones. These were atmospheric disturbances, subtle at first, like distant thunder. Wind patterns shifted unnaturally. Electronic devices glitched and overloaded. Dominion radar posts reported odd disruptions, brief sensor blindness, then nothing. Varan grew uneasy but refused to show it. He doubled patrols, prepared planetary defenses. Just in case. Meanwhile, Mirahan stood outside the rebel hideout at dawn, staring toward the horizon. The mountains were still, the stars beginning to dim with the rise of the local sun. That's when the sky cracked. A single sonic boom echoed across the valley, loud enough to shake birds from the trees. Then another, and another. Mira's mouth fell open. Streaks of fire lanced through the sky, cutting downward at impossible speed. Hundreds of them like meteors, but too precise, too organized. Each trail burned white-hot, breaking through the upper atmosphere with coordinated trajectories. They weren't meteors. They were drop pods. The first one struck just outside the capital, leveling a section of Dominion barracks. The ground trembled with impact. A moment later, its hatch blew open in a hiss of steam and pressure. From within stepped a Terran soldier clad in obsidian-colored power armor. Heavy, angular, scorched black. The kind of armor not seen in public Terran military displays. This was specialized classified. His weapon was a multi-barreled rotary cannon that whined as it spun up. Then came the second pod. Then a dozen more. They landed in refineries, transport hubs, enemy strongholds striking with terrifying accuracy. The drops weren't random. They were surgical, pre-coordinated, executed with real-time battlefield knowledge no one on the surface should have had. The Dominion reeled. Varan scrambled his fleet for a response. Anti-air turrets turned skyward, unleashing flak and plasma. Rounds into the heavens. But the pods didn't dodge, they endured. Coated in ablative shielding, moving too fast and too low, they punched through like fire-tipped spears. In the city, Dominion troops shouted orders over comms, but panic already set in. The fire trails continued. Pod after pod, soldier after soldier. Humanity's answer had come not in the form of speeches, not with banners or politics, but with fire and fury. And with them came the Revenant Division. To most of the galaxy, that name meant nothing. To Dominion war planners, it was legend, unconfirmed, a whispered rumor in Black Ops briefings. Earth's invisible retaliation force, deployed only when diplomacy was dead and vengeance was the only language worth speaking. Mira and her squad watched as the skies lit up with streaks of fire, impact flashes, and the stutter of pulse fire. Echoing in the distance, she didn't smile. Not yet, but her eyes filled with something close to awe. She'd seen Terran soldiers before, disciplined, brave, but predictable. These were different. They weren't just soldiers. They were wrath incarnate. In the distance, explosions blossomed across Dominion fortifications. Airships tried to flee only to be shot down mid-ascent. Local transmission towers fell silent. Entire units of Threx commandos vanished under-coordinated. Assaults. Mira grabbed her gear. "We move," she ordered. "Where?" One of her squad asked, stunned. "To the fire," she said. "It's ours." In the capital, Admiral Voran looked to the heavens, his smug confidence gone. For the first time, he saw what Earth truly was: not a sleeping giant, but a predator with infinite patience. It hadn't forgotten KIR-9. It had waited. Watched. And now it had come not to negotiate, not to demand surrender, but to punish. By the end of that day, over half of Dominion surface forces were gone. Not in retreat gone. Their bunkers breached. Their walkers disabled. Their command centers burned out from within. The Revenants moved with terrifying coordination, each strike perfectly timed with the next, as if they had rehearsed this exact battle 1,000 times. As night fell on the planet, the sky continued to glow, not with sunlight or stars, but with the burning wreckage of Earth's answer. The full magnitude of Earth's response began to unfold in the chaos that followed the initial drop. The Dominion forces, once proud and methodical in their occupation, were now disoriented, scattered, and overwhelmed. The suddenness of the assault wasn't the only terrifying aspect, it was the calculated precision of the attackers that shook the enemy to its core. The Revenant division didn't act like ordinary soldiers. They didn't form predictable lines or follow textbook military patterns. They moved like a living storm, unrelenting, coordinated, and impossible to anticipate. Their entrance had been explosive, but their advance was surgical. Each squad worked autonomously but with uncanny synchronization. They seemed to know the terrain, enemy positions, and tactical choke points before they even landed. Dominion attempts to regroup were consistently outflanked, outgunned, and wiped out with ruthless efficiency. What Dominion officers had dismissed as just humans now tore through their elite forces like a reaping force of nature. Resistance was not only futile, it was suicidal. One such moment unfolded near the fuel convoys west of the capital. 3 armored Threx tanks rolled into position to hold the line against advancing Terrans. They never fired a shot. A Revenant unit emerged from the tree line, not walking, but charging. Their forward soldier, nicknamed Blackjack by later survivors, carried a magnetic lance and used it to pierce the lead tank's armor like paper. The vehicle exploded from within moments later, the rest consumed by precision demolition. Charges in the same coordinated strike. Civilians and remaining rebels alike watched in shock. Some wept openly. Others simply fell to their knees as the unthinkable happened before their eyes. Earth's warriors weren't just winning, they were dominating. Back in her mountain hideout, Lieutenant Mira Han could hardly believe what she was witnessing through her high-powered scope. These weren't standard-issue Federation Marines. They didn't carry the usual blue armor of peacekeeping units. Instead, their gear was scorched black, unmarked, devoid of rank insignia. It was armor designed not to inspire hope, but to spread fear. The few radio bursts Myra intercepted confirmed her suspicions. These were Revenants, Earth's most clandestine and elite force. She had heard whispers of them back at the Academy, rumors of a unit that operated without public record, sent only into hopeless war zones where complete annihilation of the enemy was the only acceptable outcome. They were ghosts with guns, precision, executioners. The last line Earth never admitted existed. And now they were here. Mira ordered her unit to move. "If we stay hidden, we'll miss it," she said. "The liberation, the reckoning." The Revenants didn't speak much, not even to those they rescued. But when they did, it was with calm assurance. "You held the line, one of them said to a young rebel medic. That's all that was needed. That simple acknowledgement you held meant everything to those who'd survived weeks of fear, brutality, and despair. Earth hadn't come for glory or ceremony. It had come for justice. Dominion leadership panicked. Admiral Varan had once stood atop the palace's central tower, watching over a conquered city. Now he hid in an underground bunker, desperately sending encrypted calls for reinforcements that would never come. He couldn't understand it. They're human, he raged. They should fear pain. They should bleed like the rest. But the humans who'd come from the sky weren't afraid. They had endured worse. Trained in the void, tested on death worlds, and forged in Terran Black projects that never saw the light of interstellar diplomacy. Every Revenant was a veteran of 10 wars. No one ever heard about War's Earth, never admitted to fighting. They didn't bleed. They burned, and they brought that fire with them. By the end of the second day of the counter-assault, the Dominion's grip on Kiral 9 had unraveled. More than 60% of their forces were neutralized or in disarray. Many surrendered on sight, throwing down weapons before even being engaged. Others fled into the wilds, hoping to escape rather than face the unstoppable march of Terran Wrath. In orbit, Dominion support vessels attempted retreat only to be hunted down by automated Terran defense satellites that had quietly reactivated in sync with the Basible's attempted retreat, only to be hunted down by automated Terran defense satellites that had quietly reactivated in sync with the Masalites, that had quietly reactivated in sync with the Pamsid Nain to be automated Terran defense satellites that had quietly reactivated in sync with the Revenant landing. Those who thought they could run were wrong. Earth had reclaimed skies, and it had no intention of letting anyone forget that fact. The silence above was long gone. Now, only fire remained. As the sun rose on the 4th day of Earth's counter-invasion, the landscape of Kiral 9 had changed entirely. Once marked by the burning banners of the Threx Dominion, the capital city now lay in stunned silence. Not because of fear, but because the war, at least on the surface, was over. The Revenant Division had completed their objective, and now came the aftermath. Lieutenant Mirahan, after surviving weeks in the mountains with little more than hope and grit, marched beside her squad into the ruined city. She hardly recognized it. Buildings still smoldered, and some Dominion emblems remained charred into walls. But something had returned to the era, a weight that had lifted. It was freedom. But more than that, it was vindication. As Mira entered the central plaza, she spotted them. Revenant soldiers standing in formation, not as conquerors, but as sentinels, silent, unmoving, and still radiating that deadly, impassive energy. These weren't the kinds of troops you approached with small talk. These were the ones you saluted from a distance and hoped never to stand across from in battle. One of them turned and noticed Mira. His armor hissed slightly as it unlocked, and he removed his helmet. He was older than she expected. Scarred face, gray-streaked beard, and calm eyes that had clearly seen more war than any records could track. He offered her a steel canteen. "You held," he said plainly. It wasn't praise. It wasn't meant to lift morale. It was a statement of fact, of recognition. Mira's throat tightened at those 2 words. You held. After everything, starvation, fear, the screams of civilians. She couldn't save Earth had come, and those 2 words were its validation. You came. She whispered, almost not believing it. The Revenant nodded. Always. Elsewhere in the capital, the last Dominion prisoners were being rounded up. Among them, Admiral Varan. Varan, once so proud and cruel, was a shadow of his former self. His ornate armor had been stripped away, his face bloodied and bruised. He had been captured trying to flee through a service tunnel beneath the palace. When cornered, he tried to offer terms. The Revenants hadn't replied. They simply dragged him to the city square and made him watch. He watched as Dominion banners were burned and trampled. He watched as refugees were united with loved ones. He watched as medics, human and alien alike, treated the wounded with gentle precision, as if all lives now had worth again. He watched as Earth rebuilt what he had tried to erase, and he watched as the sky, still scorched from the battle, lit up with something new. The TSV Ferrum Lux, a Dreadnought-class Terran Federation warship, descended into low orbit, its silhouette casting a vast shadow across the broken city. Its sheer scale was awe-inspiring. It hadn't been needed in the battle. The Revenants had done the job before it ever arrived, but its presence sent a message. This isn't just retribution. This is permanence. Earth is watching now, shortly. After its arrival, the Ferrum Lux sent out a wide-spectrum transmission. No encryption, no delays. Every civilian, rebel, and Dominion straggler on Kirill 9, and hundreds of listening outposts across the sector, heard it clearly. Just 5 words. We heard you. We're here. No speeches, no threats, no declarations of war or treaties of peace. Just a calm, declarative statement, simple, human, and yet terrifying in its implication. The galaxy had assumed Earth was silent because it was wounded, distracted, or worst of all, apathetic. But the truth was more chilling. Earth had heard everything. And instead of rushing in with bluster or desperate fleets, it had waited, watched, and planned its response. When the moment came, it didn't send diplomats. It sent fire. Not to posture, but to finish what others had started. Those 5 words were a turning point. Across the galaxy, allied systems felt a surge of renewed hope. Refugee worlds and human colonies realized they were not alone. That Earth's silence had not meant abandonment. It had meant preparation. On the other side, empires like the Threx Dominion reeled. Entire war plans were scrapped. Generals resigned. In hushed war rooms, the phrase was repeated over and over again: if Earth falls silent, pray it stays that way. Back on Kirill 9, Mirahan stood beneath the looming shadow of the Ferrum Lux, surrounded by other survivors. The ground was scorched, buildings broken, but people stood upright again. Some even smiled. Children played near cratered roads. The Dominion's grip was broken because Earth had answered. The war for Kirill 9 was over. But what came next was not peace, it was reckoning. With Dominion forces crushed and their leadership captured, the world entered a strange, sobering calm. The echoes of gunfire had faded. The drop pods were silent. Now, embedded like ancient meteors into city streets, mountainsides, and farmlands. Yet their message lingered. Earth came, and nothing would be the same again. In the ruined capital square, Admiral Varan, the architect of the invasion, knelt in chains. The same alien who had once mocked Earth's silence now stared in disbelief at the humanitarian aid operations around him. The sight seemed unreal. Terran engineers were already restoring infrastructure with brutal efficiency, bridges repaired overnight, water systems humming again, power grids blinking to life. Mobile hospitals appeared like magic, staffed by both Terran and local volunteers. Food was distributed. Children were given clean blankets, not by soldiers but by civilians in armored transports, arriving behind the Revenants to rebuild what they had scorched clean. The same hands that brought fire now brought hope, but not for Varan. He wasn't executed, despite many survivors demanding it. Earth's warriors didn't spill blood for spectacle. Instead, they did something far more devastating. They forced him to watch. He watched survivors tell their stories to Earth's journalists. He watched Threx prisoners treated with basic dignity, while the crimes they committed were recorded and broadcast to the galactic courts. He watched a Dominion flag be folded, placed in a museum box labeled Relic of Failed Tyranny. And most of all, he watched as Earth's symbol, an old, scarred planet wrapped in a blue and white banner, was raised once more. This was no simple military victory. This was a declaration. Earth wasn't just defending its colonies anymore. It was reshaping the rules. The TSV Faramlux remained in low orbit, a monolithic reminder that Earth's patience had limits. Even though the Revenant division had withdrawn, the ship's presence alone kept the entire sector in check. It didn't broadcast threats. It didn't send further messages. It just remained. And the galaxy watched. In the following days nearby, systems began reopening diplomatic channels with Earth. Old alliances were revived. Even neutral powers issued statements praising the humanitarian intervention, carefully avoiding any mention of fear, but the undertone was clear. No one wanted to be the next KIRELL-9. Among the civilians, Mirahan became something of a symbol. Once a forgotten lieutenant stranded in the hills, now she was seen as the one who endured long enough for Earth to arrive. Though she deflected attention, her leadership was undeniable. The Revenants didn't give medals, but they left her with something more valuable: recognition. Before they departed, the Revenant field commander spoke with her briefly. "No cameras, no ceremony. We don't stay," he said. "We move where we're needed." She nodded. "Understood. But we remember who held the line." And then they were gone. Not with a parade. Not with a farewell speech. Just silence again. But this silence felt different. It wasn't the dread of abandonment. It was the calm after vengeance. The story of Kirill 9 spread rapidly. The 5-word message sent by the Ferrum Lux, "We heard you. We're here," became a rallying cry across human and allied worlds. It was etched into war memorials, graffitied onto broken outposts, and printed on the armor of new colonial defense units. But more than words, it was the memory of what happened next, the fire from the sky, the impossible soldiers, the wrath of Earth that left the greatest impact. For the enemies of humanity, it was a warning. For Earth's allies, it was reassurance. And for the galaxy at large, it was a realization. Earth may go quiet. It may seem still. It may even seem absent. But when it answers completely. No half measures. No compromises. Just fire.